Welcome to the Go Phish podcast, where we dig into the real world stories of the people defending businesses from the scams, hacks, and social engineering attacks that never seem to stop. I'm Dan Thornton, and today I'm joined by Ilya Rubinshteyn from Aegis IT Solutions. Ilya is the president and chief compliance officer of Aegis IT Solutions, a cybersecurity and compliance firm founded in 2010. The company specializes in providing managed security and compliance services to small and mid-sized businesses, helping them navigate the complexities of IT security and regulatory compliance. I'm really excited for this conversation to hear how Aegis is navigating those changes we're seeing in the industry, from the threats landscape, where they see the biggest risks right now, and how security companies can play an even bigger role in helping customers stay safe. Ilya, thank you very much for joining us today.
Dan, it's my pleasure.
For people who don't know Aegis, what's your focus and who are the typical customers that you guys are supporting?
We focus on small and mid-sized businesses, primarily around Southeast Florida, um, and New York and New Jersey. And then we've started going into Massachusetts about a year and a half, 2 years ago.
Fantastic. And are you looking at any specific industries, or is it, industry agnostic, and who are you mainly working with?
So by and large, we are industry agnostic. However, we focus on regulated industries, the ones that are at most at risk from being targeted and also from being investigated. And they have very stringent compliance requirements by the US authorities, whether it's FTC, CFTC, things like that.
Ilya, you've been in the trenches of cybersecurity and IT for a while. What originally led you to the cybersecurity space, and what keeps you ticking?
So it was the I Love You virus back in early 2000s that got me really thinking about the cybersecurity space. And then my first foray into cybersecurity and compliance was back in 2011, 2012, where the company I was working for did some Sarbanes-Oxley audits for PwC. And that was exciting because that gave me a real understanding of the differences between being secure and being compliant, and how little most people understand what the difference actually is.
Fantastic. From your perspective, what you're seeing today from your customers, from your team, from your engineers, from your researchers, what's been the biggest evolution in cyber threats since you started?
Now, there is an old adage that I very much subscribe to, and that is the more things change, the more things stay the same. The end user is still by far the biggest target. The change in threat landscape is the artificial intelligence and its enablement to create more sophisticated phishing emails, social engineering attacks, where there is more capability to automate scrubbing of the data and then presenting the attack as from a more holistic perception, as it were. There's also one of the things I've noticed over the last couple of years is threat actors are using services like dynamic DNS to give themselves legitimacy. So, and they're bypassing anti-spam filters left and right. And what we are finding often is that once the phishing attack is past the email filter, the spam filter, there is very little protection for the end user. And now we're very much relying on an individual susceptibility or lack thereof to protect the organization.
So what you're saying is we've seen a huge evolution in how threat actors are bypassing technical controls using new AI technology to get to the end user. But like you say, they're still targeting the end users as their sort of main game.
Correct. Correct. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a really cool way to look at it. And you don't think that the defenses, the technical countermeasures to that using AI are going to get to a point where they can stay ahead of it, and we're going to be able to remove that human element from security. We're going to be able to remove that end user risk completely. Do you think we'll ever get there, or do you think the threat actors are always going to stay ahead of the defenses that are being put in place?
Here is the thing. In my experience, at any point in time, anybody can get compromised. And it all depends on their current mental state, their current emotional state, and their current psychological state. And it also depends on if the attack hits on the right triggers. We all have our own triggers. Some people get triggered by threats. Some people get triggered by promises of newly found wealth. We all know about the Nigerian princess.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But the fact of the matter is that people are susceptible, and it's very challenging in the modern workplace to protect that susceptibility using technology. If you look at it from a military perspective, right? There was an old military saying that a donkey with a bag of gold can get inside even the most secure installations. And it's very much true. We don't need to go very far. Look at the Coinbase hack. They basically bribed employees of with either third Coinbase or a third-party vendor, but that's irrelevant. So how do we protect against that? How do we detect that? And how do we stop that? If somebody solves that puzzle, they'll be wealthier than Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk combined.
Yeah, yeah. And this is, I mean, it's actually such a relevant case study to talk about, and it's so recent and a perfect example of how even if you nail the phishing side of it and you nail the tricking people to divulging information that they shouldn't, or tricking people to take action that they shouldn't, it's still human nature for people to, you know, be corrupted. And having that insider threat, and a lot of time it's not malicious. It's not, a lot of people think about the insider threat like it's a bunch of pissed off employees that want to do bad to the company. It's not that. It's people who are trying to make a little bit of extra money and don't think what they're doing is actually really that bad. And you know, they're not being super malicious about it. And that Coinbase, the Coinbase attack is the perfect example of it.
And the other bit of it that I've noticed a lot of is dealing with the SMBs, is that there is still that prevalent thought that nobody cares about us.
Yeah, yeah. We hear it a lot. Yeah.
And I will never forget it. The guys that built my fence is a small mom and pop shop that absolutely zero security. They get compromised. They have a database of several thousand clients in Southeast Florida, which is a very wealthy place as it is, right? We know about Miami, we know about Palm Beach, we know about Jupiter Isles. A lot of companies are here. There's a lot of things with crypto in here. They got hacked, used their email to send out phishing messages, sending malware to their clients. That company is now out of business. Fantastic guys. They're like, well, what can we do to protect? There's a few very simple things like do not use an 8-character password and implement MFA, but you don't think about it or have somebody advise you on it.
Yeah.
And the worst thing about it is the impact to them is so outsized and so painful. It's totally heartbreaking.
In comparison to the few small changes, the few small protections that they can implement very easily compared to the massive impact that they would have on their business. As you say, it's completely outsized, but they think it's only the big companies. But the big companies, they can survive this stuff. They can shrug it off. They can deal with it and move on to the next attack. Your small businesses probably get one attack before they get shut down.
You
And
get
it
one
is,
chance. I mean,
yeah,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, like look at Coinbase, look at Target, right? They've had several major breaches, still Target stores everywhere. And on and on and on. And these companies survive it, but the mom and pop shop, they're one and done. That's it.
it's a tough one. Where are you seeing the hottest areas of demand from your customers right now, Ilya? Is it still mainly, are they demanding the tech defenses? Are they going after the new products? Or are you seeing more focus on policy and compliance side? Or are you getting customers wanting to manage their human risk and try and approach that human element side of it?
Interestingly enough, so one of the things we do is penetration testing. And interestingly enough, one thing that's being very much overlooked recently is physical risk. People do not understand that there are a lot of people that are outside of their control that can gain physical access to their environment. And once they've gained that physical access, at this point, it's all she wrote. It's like I always tell my clients that I do pen tests for. If I'm on your network for about 10 minutes, you are done. There is absolutely nothing you guys can do to stop somebody like me from doing whatever they want. And then I also see a lot of false sense of security because they're using a quote unquote a big name for protection. Whether it's they're paying for CrowdStrike or Sentinel One, or they use the entire Microsoft suite with Defender Plan 2, and you have all these deployments, and then you look at them and they're straight out of the box. They have these huge firewalls and these elaborate setups that give them that full sense of security while not realizing that they have a lot of open holes from vectors they're not even considering. People that we have Mimecast or Proofpoint or what have you as a spam filter. I'm like, well, that's great. What happens if it's a valid email? And I just get a blank stare. So I think, to sum it up, I think what I'm seeing a lot of is confusion. What I'm seeing a lot of is lack of understanding.
So loud right now, and there's so much happening, and there's so much being pushed on the companies. Or do you think that companies, and your smaller companies, your mid-sized companies, they don't have the budget for technically experienced CISOs and security experts? Therefore, these guys just don't know what they're talking about and need education and help?
I think it's the marketing being loud, and I think it's lack of qualified people at the top that can take a holistic view of the situation. For most people, the Shakespearean what's in a name is they don't even understand it. They don't understand that the vendor you are using is irrelevant. It is the overall systems. One of the things that we try to educate our clients on is the concept of concentric circles of defense, which is the concept that is as old as time itself.
Yeah, old military.
Exactly. They don't understand, but people think we have this EDR product and this anti-spam product and this authentication management product, and you look at their cybersecurity stack and they have 10, 15, 20 products in their cybersecurity stack. And my first question is, how do you even manage that? And then from the managed services perspective, there are companies that every answer to a problem is yet another adding another product to the mix. And now I've seen systems during our audits that would have probably 7 to 10 independent agents running on them. And then people are complaining about performance. I'm like, well, of 10 things
Yeah.
eating it all up, like, what are you expecting?
Yeah. And then security then gets a bad rap. And you're trying to build a
Exactly.
positive culture around security and protecting data, but it has such a bad rap because it's such a pain in the ass, because you've got all these things blocking you and pushing you and notifying you and preventing you from doing your work easily. Now it gets the bad rap, and now nobody wants to talk about cybersecurity or invest in it because it's got a bad connotation around.
One of the things we're trying to deploy, we have some clients that are startups, and we're starting to work with startup hubs, both here in Florida and up north. And one of the things we try to proliferate, and we are getting some pushback, but we're also getting some interest, as security by design and compliance by design. So you introduce that vantage point early into the platform, and then you have the holistic view of it, and you say, okay, well, what is the impact from a security perspective? And then what is the operational impact of implementing this cybersecurity feature? And if you do it early, the impact is a lot more benign. It's a lot less felt, and you're ingrained with it. It's almost like, it's a lot easier to teach a baby to swim when they're 6 months old than when they're 4 years old. It's this very same concept.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting, and a very cool sort of concept to take to market into the startup space, because they need it so badly, and they're so focused on so many other things and going as fast as they can. You can build that product, and that product can do everything it wants. That product cannot go to market until it's secure and tested and has been through all of its security protocols. But if you're only starting that on the week you want to release your product, you're months behind. And if yeah, if you guys can work with small companies and startups from day one to try and do that and educate them and build that culture around it, that's a really cool thing to be doing. Very cool. Love it. Beyond the tech stack, Ilya, do you see your customers starting to ask for help with the people side of security, awareness, behavior change, security culture? Is that something that you guys are advising on? Is that something you guys push? Or actually, are you seeing demand for it?
So it doesn't come up until it hits you. Most with most clients, they start talking about awareness and security awareness and need for training, usually after our first phishing test. And when we go into a client and we would show 30, 40, 50% the workforce reveals credentials, clicks on a malicious link, and they look at you and they're like, how could this happen? Why didn't I see it before? We had a client where we were brought in and they said, well, we're very secure, we're very safe. And they use phishing testing by a well-known platform, and they were showing like single digit proliferation. What we do is we use custom templates, and then we send the emails from within the tenant. What we're doing is we're saying, okay, well, let's say an attacker got past your spam filter. Now what? And we send it out. And at that point, we craft the emails based on how the actual email from within the company would look like, which is exactly what the threat actors do in this day and age, especially using AI. And all of a sudden, our proliferation rates are 40, 50%. And that gets people's attention. And at that point, now they're willing to listen. Now they're willing to get trained. But even then, they're like, well, I have this training from my HR vendor or this vendor or that vendor. How is yours different? So educating the consumer on the need of individualized training is an arduous task.
It's a tough one for sure, because a lot of the time your IT professionals or security professionals are not training professionals, and sometimes you can be talking to the training person, and sometimes you're talking to the security person or the IT person, or sometimes the small businesses don't have any of all of the above. Now you're trying to talk to the CEO or the COO and convince them of the need for it. Yeah, it's a tough one. How are you guys getting around that? How are you approaching that? How are you talking to your customers? What's your line for convincing them that they need to be training their employees?
Well, the one bit is we show them how susceptible they are. We very much try to avoid the whole threatening bit. Oh, you guys need this because otherwise you get fined. Oh, you guys need this because otherwise you will get hacked. We try to be upfront about it. We tell them that, listen, by our internal research, about 92% of the phishing messages get stopped by your spam filters. What gets in there is something that is especially well crafted. Think about, and the analogy that works well for me is I use if you get a bug infestation in your house. You know, most people, they have some sort of setup where either they do it themselves or somebody comes in and they spray the area around about the bugs to keep all the pests and rodents out. So the ones that do get in, these guys are the stronger kind. These guys are the worst kind. And these are the guys that will do damage. I tell them the only way to prevent it is to train the people's reflexes to, instead of clicking on the link in the email, either forwarding the email to us or to your internal IT staff, or simply picking up a phone saying, Mr. John, the CEO, or Mr. Jane, the CEO, Did you just really authorize me to wire $60,000 to Hong Kong or $500,000 to Saudi Arabia or Nigeria, whatever it may be?
Getting people to take action. I mean, it's one thing educating them about the threat. It's another thing actually training people to change behavior and introduce a culture where people will actually have the balls to pick up that phone and phone the CEO and challenge them, because it could be a legit request. And, a lot of people are very hesitant to do that sort of thing. They're very hesitant to forward emails to IT in case it's not a threat and they look stupid, or in case they don't want to bother IT or they don't want to bother the boss. To get people to change their behavior and do stuff they haven't done before and out of their comfort zone is a tough one. Education will only get you so far. Training and awareness will only get you so far, but you have to start with awareness so that people are aware of the threats and the impact of it and aware of what they need to do. Then you need to train them to actually start doing that on a regular basis. So it's a big thing, and that's definitely why I think security awareness training, employee training, human risk management in general it's a tough one for the industry, because your technical products are a plug and play. You buy a technical product, you convince your team that this is going to be implemented, you get sign off on it, it gets implemented across the board, and now it's on all devices, or now it's on the servers, or now it's on the network. And managing your human risk is a lot of hard work. And it's not just a plug and play. It doesn't work that way. There's a lot more that needs to go into it, from communications to getting buy-in from the top down, to find great training content that's going to raise awareness and going to engage employees, and then doing all the testing and following up on the testing and communicating the testing. Yeah, it's a lot of hard work.
Well, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. I think you're right. Doing either training or building up awareness or changing how people look at things, each one but on its own, or the technology piece, each one on its own will not achieve the result, but a combination of them that can do wonders. And as you were talking, I was thinking to myself, remembering to elementary, middle, high school, and college. And the one thing that my teachers and professors always pushed on to us is the only stupid question is the one you do not ask. So then, how do we go from that culture to the culture of don't bother the boss, don't bother IT, don't bring awareness, don't raise things up? I see a very interesting thing. I've seen organizations where the internal IT would turn this into a joke, but through the joke they got people to relax and their reporting rates went up.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
I think you have to pay attention to your staff. You have to pay attention to who you work with. But the other bit about managing human risk and human capital is, frankly, you don't know what's out of that bed that person will get up the following morning and what are they going to do. So, and this is why you do this thing in an underhanded manner, but then you also have to keep an eye on things, and you have to keep an eye on human behavior and technology behavior. And the one thing I've been noticing is that a lot of systems that promise behavior monitoring and analytics, they don't. They claim to, but they don't. So, and I'm really hopeful that AI can help solve that piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, time will tell. Definitely an exciting time to be in the industry. Ilya, there's a lot of talk about regulation driving change in the security space, whether it's compliance mandates, regulatory mandates, or even insurance pressures. What are you seeing sort of driving adoption of security and driving spend? Ticking boxes for regulation compliance, insurance requirements? Is it businesses experiencing it themselves, or is it scaremongering in the media? What do you think's driving more companies, more small companies and mid-sized companies to adopt security and start spending?
Pain has been, is, and always will be.
Avoidance of pain that hasn't come yet, or pain that they've already experienced themselves and they want to avoid
No,
it again?
pain needs to be experienced in order to be understood.
Yeah.
I remember myself as a kid where I was standing next to a hot stove and my dad telling me, do not touch that pan, it's really hot. And I looked at him, smiled, and I put my hand right on that pan. In a split second, I understood exactly what he was talking about. And ever since then, I was, I think, 4 years old at the time. I made sure I had a nice flag next to me and on my hand when I touched something on the stove. I think the challenge with regulations is lack of enforcement. The challenge with companies that get hacked, there is this initial knee-jerk reaction, and then it goes away. Companies that haven't experienced a breach or they haven't yet been hit with the after effects of a breach, they're looking at everything from an immediate cost perspective, not realizing that or not accounting for what is the impact of the event versus what is the cost to avoid the event or prevent the event. One of the things I've seen with the cyber insurance, for example, is companies started taking things a lot more seriously when cyber insurance companies started asking for evidence of compliance on for the date the agreement was signed. So if you got insurance 5 years ago and you were breached today, you don't show what you have in place today. Well, you do, but you have to show what you had in place 5 years ago. Because if you didn't have it then, they're not going to pay your claim.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And when companies are realizing that, now they're thinking about it. Other type of pain is do you get customers? So we do a lot of SOC 2 advisory, which is the de facto standard if you're a SaaS company. And it's very simple. In the United States, if you're offering a SaaS product, if you're not SOC 2 certified, you don't get business. It's very simple. And if you do not do these annual certifications, your current customers will go away and your new customers will, well, the customers that matter will not do business with you. I see a lot of developments with third-party risk management where organizations are starting to force their vendors to implement TPRM down the stream. So I'm not worried, especially for large organizations, I'm not worried about their tier one provider. I'm worried about the tier three, tier four, tier five. I'm not worried about the director of the cleaning company that I hired. I'm worried about the sub of a sub that actually brings the people on site. That's what keeps me awake at night.
Yes, supply chain risk is a very real thing, and we're seeing more and more cases of that. And for a lot of small companies and even mid-sized businesses, they're completely unaware of that risk, which is so interesting, and why it's needed to have managed security services or security assessments or security advisory to really help them understand that risk and what they can do.
Absolutely. And again, going back to Coinbase, right? Like we discussed, it was a third-party provider whose employees got compromised. And I'm sure the provider was vetted, but was there the necessary rigor in ensuring continuous compliance instead of point in time?
It's interesting. Ilya, before we wrap up, can you let listeners know how they can learn more about Aegis or connect with you online?
I'm very easy to find on LinkedIn. You can email us at ilya@aegis-solutions.net or info@aegis-solutions.net. You can find us on Google. You can give us a call. It's 551-299-2001. We're very easygoing about answering questions, even giving advice. A person called me yesterday. They're launching a little office and they were asking me about their technology needs. And I'm like, well, these are the different options. This is what you guys should be aware of. These are some of the red flags that you should listen for when you talk to people. And this is the money you guys should be looking to spend. And their first response to me was, well, forget about the fact that you guys actually picked up the phone. Most companies tell me that they need to go on site and take a look at things. And I'm like, tell them, like, if you guys were a 50,000 square foot space with an office and warehouse build out, that would be me.
Yeah,
1,000 square foot office, I'll tell you what you guys need and we'll go from there.
that's amazing. Oh, no, fantastic. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Well, that's it for today's episode of Go Phish. Massive thanks to Ilya for sharing those insights. It's always great to get some raw, unfiltered view from someone on the front lines. Thanks again for listening. And if you found this valuable, drop us a follow and feel free to connect on LinkedIn. Catch you all next time. Thank you.